My name is Dale Wallace, and I've lived 52 years believing I knew what heartbreak felt like. I was wrong. Real heartbreak doesn't come with dramatic music or slow motion tears. It comes through a crackling phone line on a Tuesday evening, delivered in a whisper so quiet you strained to hear every word, hoping you misunderstood. Dad? Her voice was different, smaller, like she was hiding somewhere, speaking into cupped hands. I need to tell you something. I was washing dishes in my kitchen sink, the same one where she used to stand on a step stool, helping me rinse vegetables when she was 7. The autumn wind was rattling the windows of our old Victorian house here in Millerville, Pennsylvania. Population 3,247, where everybody knows your business, except when it matters most. To continue listening to this beautiful and special story, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Write your name and the city you're watching from, so I can include a special greeting for you in an upcoming story. What is it, sweetheart? I asked, drying my hands on the dish towel her mother had embroidered years before the cancer took her. You sound strange. I married him, Dad. The words came out in a rush, like she'd been holding her breath. I married Kevin. And you'll never see me again. The dish towel slipped from my hands. The silence stretched between us like a chasm I couldn't cross. I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow, like she was scared. Emma, what are you talking about? What do you mean you married him? When? Where are you? But the line went dead, just like that. Dial tone buzzing in my ear while my world crumbled around me. Chapter 2. The Silence After the Storm. I stood there for I don't know how long, holding that phone like it might ring again, like she might call back and tell me it was all some terrible joke. The kitchen felt too big and too small at the same time. Every corner held memories of Emma, her first day of school breakfast, teaching her to scramble eggs, the fights we had when she turned 16 and wanted to pierce her nose. Kevin. I'd only met him twice. A tall, thin guy with nervous eyes and hands that never seemed to know where to belong. Emma had been dating him for about 8 months, but she was 24, living in Philadelphia, building her career as a graphic designer. I figured it was just another relationship that would run its course. How wrong I was. That night, I called her number 17 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. Her voice cheerful and normal, asking me to leave a message. I couldn't. What do you say to a recording when your daughter has just erased you from her life? I walked through the house like a ghost. Past the family photos lining the hallway, Emma's graduation, our fishing trips to Lake Wallenpaupack, Christmas mornings when it was just the two of us after Sarah died. In every picture, we looked happy, connected, like a team. Sleep didn't come that night. I sat in my recliner, the one Sarah had complained was too big for the living room, and tried to piece together where I'd gone wrong. Had I been too protective, not supportive enough? The questions circled like vultures, picking at every memory I thought was precious. Chapter 3. Searching for clues in empty spaces. The next morning, I called in sick to the hardware store, where I'd worked for 15 years. Tom, my manager, didn't ask questions. Small towns have a way of sensing when something's off, and my voice probably gave away more than I intended. I drove the 2 hours to Philadelphia, to Emma's apartment building. The doorman, a kind older black man named Marcus, who'd always remembered my name, looked uncomfortable when he saw me. She moved out yesterday, Mr. Wallace, he said, not meeting my eyes. Had a truck come early morning, took everything. My legs felt weak. Did she leave a forwarding address? Marcus shook his head. I'm sorry, sir. She specifically asked us not to give out any information. I sat in my truck in that parking garage for 2 hours, watching people come and go from the building where my daughter had lived for 3 years. People with normal lives, probably talking to their kids, making weekend plans, complaining about ordinary things. I envied every single one of them. When I finally drove home, the house felt different. Not just empty, abandoned. Like Emma had taken something essential with her when she decided I no longer existed. I found myself going through her old room, looking for clues I might have missed. Her high school yearbooks, the diary she'd hidden behind her dresser. I'd always known where it was but never read it. Photo albums from family vacations. Everything looked normal. Happy even. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe I'd been so focused on the surface happiness that I'd missed the cracks underneath. Chapter 4. The town starts talking. By Thursday, the whispers had started. Millerville is the kind of place where news travels faster than wildfire. especially when it's about someone's personal business. I felt eyes on me when I finally returned to work, conversations that stopped when I walked into rooms. "How's Emma doing?" asked Mrs. Henderson. At the grocery store, her voice dripping with false concern. "Haven't seen her around lately." I mumbled something about her being busy with work and hurried away, but I could feel her watching me, probably already formulating theories to share with her bridge club. At work, my coworkers tried to be kind but awkward. Frank, who worked the paint counter, clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Kids, huh, they sure know how to surprise us." Like Emma getting married and cutting me out of her life was just typical young adult behavior. But it was Betty Kowalski, who'd known our family since Emma was in diapers, who really gutted me. She cornered me in the parking lot after work, her weathered face full of genuine concern. "Dale, honey, I heard about Emma. Are you okay?" I tried to brush it off, but Betty wasn't having it. She grabbed my arm with surprising strength for a 70-year-old woman. "Listen to me," she said. "I raised 5 kids. Sometimes they do things that don't make sense. Sometimes they push away the people who love them most, because they're scared or confused, or just trying to figure out who they are. But that doesn't mean it's forever." I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. Chapter 5. Late Night Confessions. That Friday night, I did something I hadn't done since Sarah's funeral 6 years ago. I got drunk. Not just a couple of beers while watching the game, but truly thoroughly drunk. I sat at Murphy's Tavern, the kind of place where the bartender knows everyone's story and the locals mind their own business. Jim Murphy himself was working that night, a guy about my age who'd lost his own son in Afghanistan 3 years back. He kept the whiskey coming without judgment, just nodding when I needed another. "Want to talk about it?" he asked around midnight, when the bar was nearly empty. And suddenly I did. The whole story came pouring out, the phone call, the silence, the way Emma had just vanished like I'd never mattered at all. Jim listened without interrupting, occasionally wiping down glasses or refilling my tumbler. "You know what the hardest part is?" I heard myself say. "I keep thinking about all the things I'll never get to do. Walk her down the aisle, meet my grandkids. Hell, I don't even know if she's happy." Jim nodded slowly. "My boy used to call me every Sunday, like clockwork. Then he deployed, and the calls got sporadic. Last one I got he sounded distant, angry about something. We hung up mad at each other." He paused, his hands still on the glass he was cleaning. "I'd give anything for one more conversation, even if it was another fight." The weight of his words settled over me like a blanket. At least Emma was alive somewhere. At least there was still a chance. Chapter 6. An Unexpected Ally. The following week, I got a call from someone I hadn't expected. Emma's best friend from college, Jessica. They'd stayed close after graduation, and Jessica had always been polite, but distant with me. I figured I was just Emma's dad to her. "Mr. Wallace? I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from Emma's old address book." My heart jumped. "Have you heard from her? Is she okay?" There was a pause. She's not okay, Mr. Wallace. And I don't think she's making good decisions." Jessica asked if we could meet, so I drove to a coffee shop in Scranton, halfway between Millerville and where she lived. She was waiting for me, a petite woman with worried eyes and hands that fidgeted with her coffee cup. "I need you to know that Emma made me promise not to contact you," she said. "But I can't watch her throw her life away." Over the next hour, Jessica painted a picture of Emma's relationship with Kevin that made my blood run cold. He was controlling, jealous, and had gradually isolated Emma from most of her friends. The marriage had been his idea, a small ceremony at a courthouse, with no guests except for 2 strangers as witnesses. "He convinced her that you were trying to control her life," Jessica said, "that you'd never approve of their relationship and would try to break them up. He made her choose between him and everyone else who cared about her." "But I barely knew him," I protested. "How could I have an opinion about their relationship?" That's what I told her. "But Kevin he's very good at making people believe things that aren't true." Chapter 7. The search begins. Jessica gave me what information she had. Kevin's last name was Morrison. He worked in IT for a company that had offices in several states. They'd moved somewhere in Ohio, but she wasn't sure where. I took a vacation week from work and started searching. I called every Morrison in Ohio phone books, drove to Cleveland and Cincinnati, showed Emma's picture to hotel clerks and apartment managers. I felt like a private detective in a bad movie, except this was my life falling apart in real time. On Wednesday of that week, I got lucky. A property manager in Dayton remembered showing an apartment to a young couple matching their description. They'd paid first and last month's rent in cash and moved in about 2 weeks ago. I found their apartment building, a rundown complex on the outskirts of town where the parking lot was more potholes than pavement. I sat in my truck for hours, waiting to catch a glimpse of Emma. Around 5 in the evening, I saw her. She looked smaller than I remembered, thin. She was carrying groceries, walking with her head down, like she was trying to be invisible. Kevin was with her, his hand on her back in a way that looked more possessive than affectionate. Every instinct told me to get out of the truck, to run to her and wrap her in the biggest hug of her life. But something in her posture, the way she kept glancing nervously at Kevin, stopped me. This wasn't the confident young woman who'd graduated college with honors and moved to Philadelphia to chase her dreams. This was someone who'd been diminished. Chapter 8. The Confrontation. I waited until Kevin left the next morning. I watched him drive away in a beat-up Honda. Before approaching their apartment, my hands were shaking as I knocked on the door. Emma opened it, and the look on her face nearly broke me. Surprise, fear, and something that might have been relief all flashed across her features, before settling into resignation. "Dad," it was barely a whisper. "Hi, sweetheart." I kept my voice gentle, like I was talking to a wounded animal. "Can I come?" She looked over her shoulder, then stepped outside, closing the door behind her. We stood on the concrete walkway, two people who used to share everything reduced to awkward strangers. "How did you find me?" she asked. "Does it matter?" "Emma, what's happened to you? This isn't you." She wrapped her arms around herself. She was wearing a sweater I'd never seen before, too big for her frame, like she was trying to disappear inside it. "You don't understand," she said. "Kevin loves me. He takes care of me. By making you cut off your own father, by making you move away from everything and everyone you knew." Her eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head stubbornly. "You always thought you knew what was best for me." "Kevin says." "I don't care what Kevin says." The words came out harder than I intended, and Emma flinched. I took a breath, forced myself to speak more softly. "I care what you say, what you think, what you want." For a moment I saw a flicker of the old Emma, the girl who used to debate with me about everything from politics to pizza topping. But then it was gone, replaced by something flat and guarded. "I want you to leave," she said. "Please, Dad. Just go." Chapter 9. The Truth Comes Out. I drove back to Pennsylvania with my heart in pieces, but I didn't give up. Instead, I did something I'd never done before. I called a counselor who specialized in family relationships and abusive situations. Her name was Dr. Patricia Reeves, and she listened to my story without judgment. "What you're describing sounds like isolation tactics used by controlling partners," she explained. "Your daughter is likely being manipulated into believing that cutting ties with you is her choice, when it's actually part of a pattern of control." Dr. Reeves helped me understand that confronting Emma directly might actually push her further away. Instead, she suggested I focus on keeping the door open, sending cards, leaving voicemails, letting Emma know I would always be there when she was ready. For 3 months, I followed her advice. I sent birthday cards to their apartment. I left gentle voicemails on Emma's phone, just saying I loved her and hoped she was happy. I never mentioned Kevin or asked her to come home. I just reminded her that she had a father who would never stop caring about her. Then, on a cold February morning, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Emma's number, and my heart nearly stopped. "Dad?" Her voice was different again, smaller but also clearer somehow. "Can you come get me?" I was in my truck within 10 minutes. The drive to Dayton felt like the longest and shortest 3 hours of my life. I found Emma waiting outside a Walmart, sitting on a bench with a single suitcase beside her. When she saw my truck, she stood up and walked toward me, and I saw that she was crying. I got out and opened my arms, and she fell into them like she used to when she was little and had scraped her knee. She sobbed against my chest while I held her, not caring that people in the parking lot were staring. "I'm sorry, Dad," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry." Chapter 10. Coming Home. The drive back to Pennsylvania was quiet at first. Emma stared out the window while I tried to find the right words. Finally, she started talking. The story that came out was heartbreaking and infuriating in equal measure. Kevin had systematically convinced her that everyone in her life was trying to control her except him. He'd read her texts and emails, criticized her friends, and gradually convinced her that I was overbearing and manipulative. The marriage had been his ultimatum: choose him completely or lose him forever. I knew something was wrong, she said, her voice barely audible. But by then, I felt like I was in too deep, like I'd burned too many bridges to turn back. What changed? I asked. She was quiet for a long moment. He started talking about having kids, of how we'd raise them away from all the toxic influences in my life. And I realized that if I had a daughter, I'd want her to have a grandfather like you. I'd want her to know she came from a family that loved her unconditionally. We stopped for coffee in a little town outside Scranton, and Emma called Jessica to let her know she was safe. Hearing her laugh at something Jessica said over the phone was like watching the sun come out after months of clouds. When we finally pulled into the driveway of our house in Millerville, Emma sat for a moment, just looking at it. The same Victorian she'd grown up in, with the same front porch where she'd learned to ride a bike and the same oak tree she'd climbed as a kid. "It looks exactly the same," she said. "I kept your room just like you left it," I admitted. "I guess I was hoping." That evening, we sat in the kitchen where it all started, eating takeout Chinese food and talking until nearly midnight. There was so much to rebuild, so much trust to repair on both sides. Emma needed therapy to work through what she'd experienced. I needed to learn how to support her, without trying to fix everything. But we had time. We had love, and we had each other. 3 months later, Emma moved back to Philadelphia, but this time she called every Sunday, just like clockwork. We made plans for her to visit for Thanksgiving, and she asked if she could bring Jessica and her new boyfriend, a kind man who worked as a teacher and made Emma laugh. Sometimes healing isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as a phone call, a hug, and the decision to keep showing up for the people you love, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. As I write this, Emma is building a new life, one where she gets to choose who's in. And I'm grateful every day that I'm one of those people.